So one of the things that I bought at the magic store was this. Tannen's Mystery Magic Box. The premise behind the Mystery Magic Box was the following. $15 buys you $50 worth of magic. What are stories but mystery boxes? A mystery box, the mystery box, the mystery box. Oh my God, like mystery boxes are everywhere. The mystery boxes, the mystery box, the mystery box, mystery boxes. And what I love about this box, and what I...
If there does exist one ultimate Hollywood movie, it would have to be Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And when I say ultimate Hollywood movie, what I mean is a movie that achieved massive success by following a proven formula. See, even though we don't like to believe in the magic of cinema, professional filmmaking isn't as random as you might think. The film industry has been doing its thing for quite a while now, and at this point most people in it are pretty aware of how to make a quote-unquote good movie for today's audiences. What works today and what doesn't. What sells today and what doesn't, which over the years has led to the formation of a very calculated narrative structure, a recipe for both qualitative and commercial success. And I know what you're thinking, if there's an established roadmap on how to make a good movie, why aren't all movies good? The answer is because there's still the variable of execution. Just because you have a recipe for greatness doesn't mean you can cook it, but that also doesn't remove the fact that the recipe exists. Pixar, for example, redoes their projects over and over again until they get it just right, which ultimately molds them into following the same formula, which is why at their core all Pixar movies are more or less the same. But animation aside, I don't think there is a movie more reliant on proven formulaic filmmaking than The Force Awakens, and it has the results to show for it. It made $2 billion at the box office. It gained the love and appreciation of general moviegoers. In other words, it must have done something right. And the question is, what exactly is that?
Hey, can I try that?
To be clear, I'm not here talking about Force Awakens itself per se. I'm not here to say whether or not I think it's a good movie. I'm not here to say whether or not I even like it that much, because that doesn't matter. What I'm here to do is use Force Awakens as an example to find out the most important structural formula elements to keep in mind when making a commercial movie for today's audiences, and how to utilize those formula elements successfully. Maybe you're a writer looking to sell your own material. Maybe you're just someone who wants a peek into the kitchen to see how the sauce is made. In any case, here it is. Here's how to make the ultimate Hollywood movie. The very first thing to take notice of in Force Awakens is just how fast it introduces the plot in form of a clear and easy to understand primary goal. And when I use the word fast here, I do mean fast, like first shot of the first full dialogue scene fast.
This will begin to make things right. Without the Jedi, there can be no balance.
Well, because of you, now we have a chance. The General's been after this for a long time.
Thanks to the prefacing work done by the opening scroll, it takes this movie 1 minute and 15 seconds of runtime to inform the audience of the plot, which here is accomplished with yet another J.J. Abrams mystery box MacGuffin that he seems to love so much you'd think he's married to one. Luke Skywalker has gone missing, and our heroes have to find him in order to defeat the millennial version of the Empire, the First Order. And the way they will physically accomplish this goal is by delivering this map leading to Luke to the Resistance and Leia before the First Order can get it. That's what this movie is. That's what we're watching. That is why we are here. And the reason this information is so crucial is because if you haven't noticed, we live in a culture of ADHD. People's patience is non-existent. They lose interest or get confused for 1 second and they're already on their phone. And if your movie isn't clear about what it's asking people to spend their time on, that's exactly what's gonna happen. I'm not saying you have to introduce the plot in the first scene, but if you don't do it within the first 10 minutes, you're dancing on thin ice. Because with the general audiences today, not informing them of the destination and where we are in relation to it is the equivalent of a car ride with a bunch of clueless kids.
Are we there yet?
No.
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 Are we there yet?
As with everything, there are exceptions. Joker, for example, is very weak on plot, and yet it made $1 billion. That is true. But firstly, I'd argue that it uses a couple different unusually ingenious narrative devices to make up for a weak plot. And secondly, for every one non-plot movie that made money, I can name you a big bunch that didn't. Plus, I doubt you're able to use a highly known and loved character like the Joker in your own material. And even if you could, honestly, what reason do you have to focus only on character and leave out plot? Why not put in the work for both? The fact is, filmmaking today is like driving around a bunch of kids. And even though you could keep them in the dark the whole trip, maybe still inform them of the general destination and where we are in relation to it fairly quickly, so that instead of them continually wondering if we're there yet, they can just sit back and enjoy the ride. Once the what in form of plot has been established, Force Awakens then turns its attention into making us care about its three main characters, which might be even more important than the plot, because even though we know what we're watching, the only way we're ever gonna care about what we're watching is if we first do so with the people in it. I'd say all three main heroes here are established in the same essential way, but the best work is done with Rey. Because the way this movie introduces Rey is pretty much the perfect way to introduce a character that the audience instantly falls in love with. Now, I'm aware that not everyone is a fan of Rey and how she develops or doesn't develop through this film, and that's fine. I'm not here to argue against that. Again, I'm not here talking about Rey as a character or the journey she goes through in this movie. What I'm here to talk about are the key narrative building blocks that her character is built upon. Because as I've discussed before, the way Rey is created isn't some random magic of cinema. It's all a basic psychological formula designed to make you care. Firstly, Rey is a struggling underdog unfairly punished by life, which is right away made very clear.
What you brought me today is worth 1/4 portion.
When you see this poor little orphan scavenger sitting alone outside her crappy home looking longingly up at the sky, you do feel for her. I don't care if you hate her after the movie, unless you're like a sociopath or whatever, when you see this for the first time, you do feel for her. But punishment alone is not enough, because alone there's a danger of your hero becoming a mopey emo whiner, and nobody likes a mopey emo whiner, Paul Dano, which is why you need the second building block of appreciative optimism. Even though Rey has nothing, she still keeps her chin up. She still actively goes out there to scavenge for material to get by. She still appreciates what little she has. She still has a clear, optimistic dream for something more. And that is why you not only care about her, you also support her. You can actually hear this combination in Rey's musical theme. It features quite a sad undertone, but also has an optimistic, eager side. And to top it off with the third building block, Rey is also someone who cares about others. Here, for example, despite all her own troubles, she cares more about a ball than she does her own survival.
60 portions.
Actually, the droids are not for sale.
That's the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Come on.
You build your character on these three fundamental qualities, you get a hero that the audience will want to right away side with and root for. And before you argue that this makes every character the same, no it doesn't. Arthur Fleck in the new Joker movie, for example, is an entirely different person than Rey, and yet he's built on the exact same fundamental qualities. He's an underdog who constantly gets unfairly beaten up by life. He still always gets back up and actively chases his optimistic dream of being a comedian, and he also cares about others. He tries to make people laugh. He takes care of his mother. Up to a point, at least. Same with Walter White, same with Daniel Plainview, same with Della Duck. It's all relative. It's not what qualities you use, it's how you use them and what for. When we have our heroes and they have their goal of delivering the map to the Resistance, we then arrive at the end of Act 1, which is bordered by the line of no return, which is exactly as it sounds. Before this moment, both Finn and Rey still have a chance to drop out from the journey. The First Order only really is after the ball that has the map to Luke Skywalker, so Finn could just leave the ball and run off on his own. Rey could just leave the ball and go back to her life as a scavenger, but once they choose to fly off with the ball in the Millennium Falcon, there's no going back. Rey, for example, throughout the movie constantly talks about going back to Jakku.
What about you?
I gotta get back to Jakku.
I have to get back to Jakku.
But I have to get home.
Jakku?
I've already been away too long.
But of course, she never does go back, because she can't, not until her journey is done. And it's this irreversibility that creates a sense of adventure and stakes and urgency. We have this extraordinary voyage mission and it will not end until it's either completed or failed. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory. After joining forces with Han Solo, Finn and Rey successfully arrive at Maz's palace to a narrative section that I like to call the midpoint checkpoint. And there's a couple things that happen here. Firstly, our heroes now clearly visually complete a portion of the plot, which this movie accomplishes by utilizing Objective B. Basically, it's like this. The big primary plot of The Force Awakens is about finding Luke Skywalker to defeat the First Order. That's our Objective A. That's what this movie is. That's something that lasts from beginning to end. But like we've already talked about, that's not actually the objective Finn and Rey are currently pursuing.
BB-8 says he's on a secret mission. He has to get back to your base.
Apparently he has a map that leads to Luke Skywalker and everyone's after it.
BB-8 said the location of the Resistance bases need to know. If I'm taking you there, I need to know.
In addition to the overarching Objective A, there's also a secondary task of getting the ball and the map of Luke's location to the Resistance and Leia. That's Objective B. That's something we accomplish around the midpoint when we get the ball to Maz, who is said to be able to take care of the rest, and then even more so soon after when the Resistance and Leia arrive. In other words, Objective B is there to visually create the feeling that we are making progress. The reason why this is so important harkens back to what I was saying about us living in a culture of ADHD. Even though the audience knows what they're watching, they can still ultimately very easily lose their patience and get bored if nothing is happening. 2 hours of characters trying to accomplish something isn't enough. We need checkpoints, we need a steady sense of progression. You can do tiny victories every once in a while, but at the middle it is a good idea to have a more notable secondary objective to resolve in a way that clearly takes us closer to our main Objective A, just to show the audience that hey, we're moving, we're getting there.
BB-8 says that you saved him.
No, it wasn't just me.
You completed my mission, Finn.
The second thing that happens at the midpoint checkpoint is the fact that the stakes are considerably raised, which again Abrams goes all in on.
It was the Republic. First Order, they've done it.
When the First Order uses Death Star 2.0 to destroy the Republic, that's when it becomes clear to everyone just how serious things are. There's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide, there seems to be no way to defeat this opponent. As a whole, things are escalated in such a way that makes the second half feel way grimmer and more difficult than the first. And again, in terms of progression and motion, that's a feeling you want. Once we near the end of the second act and move to the third, we get to a narrative point called the All is Lost moment. This is where Rey has been captured by the First Order. This is where Han and Leia talk about losing their son forever, where the First Order charges their OP weapon to blow up the Resistance. Overall, this is the hopeless moment of defeat where it feels like we've lost. I initially didn't plan to talk about this point because it's so obvious, it's in every single movie today. But lately, I've seen more and more people trying to purposefully dunk on it. Even other creators whose content I enjoy. Basically, the argument is that this All is Lost moment is bad because it very obviously is a thing in a Hollywood formula chart, which it is. But even so, that doesn't negate the impact that it has. I've said before that great movies are like roller coasters, wild rides that take you to positive as well as negative emotions. And the reason why every single Hollywood movie today has this All is Lost moment before the third act is because it by definition makes the third act into the biggest roller coaster coaster it can be. The longest way to the top is from the bottom. If your heroes are already winning when they set out to achieve final victory, that's an easy victory and it's boring. But if your heroes have already lost and set out for one last effort to achieve impossible victory, that's anything but boring. That's good storytelling. Using the chart criticism to argue against this for me is the equivalent of criticizing car manufacturers because of the fact that they all make cars with round tires. Yes, all cars do have the same exact round tires, but that's because round tires just work better than square tires. That's just how it is.
Let's face it, there's a very good reason they don't put square wheels on cars.
Look, I used to Rage Against the Machine the exact same way when I was starting out as a writer. Structure is bad, structure is the enemy, I'm doing my own thing. But the reality is, there's decades and decades worth of films that have shaped the common understanding of what works today and what doesn't, and I doubt one person could suddenly know something everyone else doesn't. Maybe so, but I doubt it. In any case, if there is one thing to learn from The Force Awakens, it's this. Don't think of proven structure formula as this annoying boss you have to obey, but instead more as a knowledgeable ally you can utilize to build your own successful thing. Seemed to work out pretty well here, at least.